a Retina 1B camera, small B. It's got problems. Doesn't cock the shutter. If I have a look down here, it's not moving that gear at all. No connection between the cocking rack and the shutter. Notice something else with this camera. Look at the angle of that door. It's folded right in this way. Means that the struts are bent. And that will probably prove to have a bearing on what happened to the cocking rack. However, let's be in and find out. Off with the rewind knob. Single screw at this end of the top cover. And I notice the top cover's got a dent on it on that corner, which means that at some stage in its life it's thumped on the ground, I would imagine. Lift off the top cover. Not an awful lot of note. The piece of glass at the front here is thick, quite roughly cut and a bit loose. That's definitely a replacement. The original must have been broken some time ago. Okay. Oh, it's very ugly under here. Right. I'll zoom you in a bit and you can see what I'm seeing. Now the rack looks unusual. The racks are brass, that's not uncommon, they were made of brass. The nickel plating's pretty much gone off that completely. At this end we have the tab that moves the frame counter. It pulls against this post here to move the frame counter to the next frame. That screw is also adjusted out an awful long way. I've never seen a tab bent back at that funny angle. I don't know whether that's because it was driven hard into a hard stop or whether somebody thought that would be a clever idea to adjust it in that particular shape. Let's pull off some of these other components that we don't need in our way. And that rack. Let's have a look at that rack. Absolutely no contact with the gear on the top of the film advance shaft. Let's have the rack out and have a look at it. That post was loose, which may mean that people have investigated this one. There we have the rack. Now interestingly, there's a lot of lines across here. I suspect that's where someone has marked it with the intention of filing the teeth back into shape. Of course, filing metal away to produce a positive shape is only good if you can bring the item closer to what it was supposed to engage with. So that's got a snaggly toothed look to it. Could be the jaw of a crocodile. It was never ever going to couple to a gear. You may notice that the rack is curved. it's got a curve running this way at this back edge. Again, that's not natural and it's not useful. The bottom teeth, the teeth on the bottom of the rack, what do they look like? They are distorted. Some of them are swept one way, some of them are swept the other way. It means that it was working against a lot of resistance at this point. Something was causing some resistance, I'd say, and the pushing and pulling has distorted those teeth. And quite possibly this is the original problem, that there was excess load at this point and it has resulted in the teeth at this point stripping out. That wouldn't be an uncommon result. So I'm going to be into this and strip it right down, reassemble it and see if I can find any other obvious reason. The number one thing that I do think has a bearing on this is the angle of that door. And when the door is bent like that, what it means is when it folds, the back of the folding strut mechanism pushes further back into the body than it normally would. So far back in the body that it actually pushes against the rack. And what that means is if some bright spark thinks it's a clever idea to cock the shutter while the camera is folded, they can move it at this end, it doesn't want to move at this end, and something's going to give. So in a mild case, it just means that there's going to be a lot of excess friction there. There would be excess friction in both directions, so it would be stiff to swing the arm out, but the arm wouldn't want to go back by itself and would have to be pushed, and that would explain the very distorted teeth on the bottom of this rack, and the distortion runs in both directions. We shall see what I find out. A bit more information about this rack. One thing I've just noticed is that this screw here, which is the support post for the back of the rack, is loose. With the front closed, I can't actually fit the rack down in the body. That goes with what I said about this sliding section going back too far. So I'm definitely quite happy with the bent struts on the door being the root cause of the failure. This loose screw here certainly won't have helped. That's supposed to support the rack, and it will have been failing to do that job well. So problems at this end caused problems at this end. With that loose screw, that just stripped them off. Well, it's the end of that particular job and the end of the day. The camera's all now back in proper functioning order. Just needed the new shutter cocking rack, nothing else was a problem. I've straightened up the front door. Now you can wind and with the door closed if you so desire. Not that I would encourage anyone to do that. It just means it's not likely to turn to you know what if you do. So the camera's good. It's certainly wasn't the most promising looking specimen. Lots and lots of sand, lots of dried grease and dirt. But it's all good to go. Were there any other problems with it? Well, funnily, what else was there? There's a chrome finger sits here connected to the shutter release. That had been bent downwards, which is an odd thing to do and can't happen by accident. On the shutter itself, there's a lever here that finger acts on. That had also been bent downwards. Vaguely possible that could have happened by accident if someone racked the shutter out to the closest focus position and managed to really whack on the shutter release. Perhaps they could have bent it by accident. But both of those bends worked in the opposite direction from each other, so it was an odd thing to do. It was just weird. But the camera itself is looking nice and clean and tidy. These marks here are from corrosion of the body aluminium body edges. That's not going away. To deal with that in a proper fashion, you would have to strip the remains of the lacquer off those edges, buff that aluminium back, which probably would mean buffing a little bit of aluminium away to get down to a clean edge, and then re-lacquering it. That would be certainly above and beyond, and I'm not doing that. So, thanks for watching. This is one Retina 1B, ready to go home.